Welcome to What's Your College Story? I'm Katie Stroud with Elikonas, and we are here today with Mark Sheppard. Before we jump in, I want to point out our QR code. This is for a survey that we're running on what's your relationship with college. We'd love to hear your experience and aggregate that and share that with you as the results come in. Um, but let's move on and bring Mark Sheppard. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Where you're working, where you're at in the world? What do you do?
Sure. I'm Mark Sheppard. I am located roughly 30, 40 miles east of Toronto in the heart of Southern Ontario. And I have been in learning and development in some form or another since 1988. Got my start as an instructor in the Army Reserve back then, and have worked in the corporate sector since 1998. And I've been very fortunate to have worked in a lot of very interesting work contexts, everything from professional services through public sector, IT, healthcare, aviation maintenance, naval damage control, and now working in the automotive sector. I'm currently working for General Motors as the learning and development lead for Diagnostics, and these are the folks who write the software that turn your check engine light on, but also the software that provides all of the information that your service technician needs to diagnose your vehicle when you have to bring it in for service.
Sounds very technical. And I'm glad you shared where you were with us today because with all the news of the astronauts, we might have thought that you were out there on the moon with that background. But yeah, so my engine light comes on. It's on right now. It needs an oil change, but yeah, we can take that to a dealership and they plug that in and it says this is what you need to be working on. So
Exactly. Exactly. So it's vehicles are certainly getting more and more complex these days. A lot more software going into vehicles. So it's a challenging environment to be supporting all of these software engineers, particularly as a non-engineer, to do that kind of work. But that's the nature of what learning development is.
right, right. And you're talking about the people like at the shops trying to figure out what's wrong with your car and
Yep,
not necessarily an engineer, but a car expert that like
that's right.
yeah, and it used to be easy, right? We had like an engine and some wheels and some bearings and stuff, but not so much any day. Today your car
That's right.
is a computer. So
Very much so.
so
Very
you
much
had a
so.
lot to learn to get to where you're at today. And
I did.
yeah. So let's dig into that a little bit. I mean,
Sure.
before you even we're talking, I mean, this is what's your college story, which
Mhm.
eventually leads to kind of what you do in life. But before you went there, where did you start from? What's your origin story?
Um, So it would probably help for folks to know some of the differences in the Canadian higher education system than what they may be experiencing in the U.S. Um, in Canada, there are really only two tiers in terms of education. There are the publicly funded community colleges as well as the publicly funded universities. The universities are the only ones that can grant degrees. If you are at a community college, you'll be granted a diploma as opposed to a degree. There is a smaller sector of private career colleges and things like that, but those operate very differently than than what you have in the public education system. There are also a few exceptions for, say, religious schools, seminaries and theological schools that do have the right to grant degrees. But for the most part, you're looking at a publicly funded university or a publicly funded community college as your choice. Some of the colleges are also transitioning into polytechnic institutes because they have agreements with universities and can actually grant degrees now. So that's been a very interesting shift in the market. But it certainly wasn't like that when I hit public education, or when I hit post secondary after finishing high school in 1986, and I just realized that was 40 years ago. That's a horrifying thought.
The
Um,
yeah, the amount of times those things happen.
I know. So back in the mid to late 80s, it was really expected that you would be going off to university, and it was very rare that you would see people being able to take a gap year and go travel or go work or do something like that before they tackled higher education. Um, and part of me regrets not being able to take that, and also having seen other people who went into post secondary who might not have been quite ready for it. So I was bound and determined throughout high school that I was going to be an architect. And you can imagine my disappointment when I got no responses from all three of the architecture schools that I applied to. Not that I necessarily regret that choice, but it was a bit of a reality check. Um,
And what was it that do you know why you got rejected? Was it
yeah,
grade?
my maths and physics skills just weren't there. I certainly had the creative bent to do it as far as I knew, but it was the math and physics stuff that weeded me out, which was fine. Um,
They do that, don't they?
Yeah. So one of the universities actually made an offer of what they called a parallel program, and I could do a combined honors in art history and architecture, taking some of the architecture elective courses, but I wouldn't be doing the architecture studio, which seemed appealing at the time. And for the first year and a bit, it was okay. But I realized a couple things partway through. One is that I didn't really like the way they were approaching teaching architecture when I was talking to my friends who were in the studio courses. It seemed very far removed from what I thought it was going to be, and I wasn't sure that I would thrive in that kind of environment. I also realized that a my combined honors in art history and architecture was probably not going to do a lot for me in terms of career pathing. And so I definitely needed to look for something else to do.
Right. I had a similar experience. I did a follow an engineer day
Hmm.
and just kind of followed along what he does. He works in an office. And he mostly so it was I was looking at electrical engineer, and this was an office of engineers. He was specifically HVAC, your heating and cooling, ventilation.
Hmm.
And it was very interesting, the science behind, how many people are going to be in a room and how many BTUs they generate and how much air circulation and all that you need. But in the end, what he was doing was just sitting in front of his computer, like matching up lines and um, telling people where the vents were going to go. And it kind of deterred me a little bit. It didn't feel like that was what my calling was. So,
Hmm.
you mentioned a lot of people do they in Canada. You just kind of like you go to high school and you go to school. It's kind of stringent, and a lot of people don't really take a gap year. Um, for those that don't know what that is, you just take a year off after you graduate, and go kind of experience the world before you go into school. And some people find that useful. And I know we've
Hmm.
we've talked in the past that, yeah, what do we really know right out of high school about ourselves and what we want to do with our lives? So,
Exactly. Exactly. And it's such a big shift from at least in Canada, from the public school system, like from secondary into post secondary. It's a huge shift for a lot of people. College, I find less so because there's little bit more structure in the college system, and also they're a lot more applied in terms of the programs that they offer. But university is a big leap, and a lot of people say, "Oh, hey, this is great. I don't have to go to classes, 5 days a week. I can wind up having a schedule that's only 15 hours a week, and I can have long weekends and all that kind of stuff." But what I don't think a lot of people appreciate is the shift in ownership for learning and prep that takes place between the end of high school and the start of university, and that's a big big leap for a lot of people to make. Even ones who say, "Oh yeah, I'm prepared for it." It
Yeah.
it can still bite you. You know, it can still really bite you, and also when the relative weight of what you are doing is concentrated like on a midterm and a final. You know, you've got your eggs in a lot fewer baskets than you have in in the high school environment or even in the college environment.
Right. Right. I have a few stories. Won't get into them too much, but we have in Washington State. It's not throughout the entire U.S., but a few states have this program where high school students can finish their last 2 years in a community college, so they graduate with a diploma and with a 2 year
Mm,
degree, which can be really helpful for that transition because, and that's students going into that. That's exactly what they say. Like, this is now not your parents are like they won't even have access to your records. You are responsible for taking ownership.
yeah,
And yet they tell them that, but I've also seen experiences where like, yeah, the student's supposed to take ownership, but then they have to meet with counselors and they're saying, "Oh, you're going to take this, this, and this." Like they just kind of replaced the
yeah,
parents telling them what they needed to do with themselves.
exactly.
But there's definitely my daughter is very passionate about education, and she's had a mix of like self-directed and private school and public school. And she said, "Mom, everyone at school is depressed, and I think I know why. Because everybody's telling them what to do. They don't have any direction." And
Yeah,
I think she's right. She's right about that.
yeah.
Uh, and I think you have more experiences to share with us to the even highlights that further. So you had this background. So tell us a little bit about your support structure for going to college.
Mm. Um, it it was, I would say some of it was there, but it certainly could have been better. I went away from my hometown to university, and so that's about a 4 hour drive away. And of course, you know, Canadians measure everything in time. So, you know, 200 miles roughly away from home. Um, you know, I had some financial support, but you know, I was using the money that I was making from the reserves to help offset costs and things like that. So that was good, but it still could be an isolating experience for that. Um, I didn't have like I went home a couple times, but I only had one visit from either of my parents in the whole 2 years I was away.
Right.
So that might be important for some people, might not be important for others, but it can feel isolating.
Right. I know I never expected to have anyone help me through school because
Mm,
it just it wasn't something that anyone did in my
yeah,
family. So
yeah, yeah.
I I
You
I
already knew you were on your own.
right, right. But to
Mm,
have that support and that structure at home and then go off to
mm,
school 3 hours away,
yeah,
that's and then to be, like you own this now. You have to figure it out.
yeah,
It can be daunting and I
very
get
much
it.
so.
So
Yep, yep.
yeah, I know.
Um, So, part of the factor into the support system was at the time, you know, there were four kids at home, me and my sister, and at the time we had two stepsisters, and we were all 1 year apart. So there was a 4 year stretch where all of us would be entering first year university. So so things were spread a little thin.
Yes, yeah, I hear that too. I had three siblings as well, and my two
Yeah,
sisters and I are 12 months apart. So that can be fun, and yeah,
yeah,
it's you have to kind of step back and let that support system support your siblings is that's what
exactly,
you have to share, right?
exactly.
Yeah. So your visions of going to college, being an architect, and all that kind of clashed with the reality of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was really at a crossroads, and I remember I was talking with my dad at the time, and he had suggested, he said, you've got the artistic skills and you've got the creativity, so would you consider graphic design? And I thought, okay. And it was supposed to be a 1 year experiment. I'd move back home and I would try the graphics program in my community college, and that kept costs down significantly, which worked well for the other three because I was at home. The tuition was about half of what I would be paying at university, so that certainly helped, and I didn't have to. And I also wasn't paying for accommodations, so that was a big plus for them, and I liked it, and so I did the community college program, and I got my diploma in graphic communications, and it was kind of an exciting time to be there. Computers were just starting to come into graphics education, and so there was a real blend of a traditionalist apprenticeship type of approach, doing things very much by hand, and combining that with doing with computers what would have taken hours for a traditional graphic artist to do. I would say it's probably the same kind of shift that people see now with work that they would have to do manually to work that they now do with AI.
Right. Yeah.
It was that kind of shift. So I appreciated that. But it was, as much as I enjoyed that, there were some market realities that I faced when I graduated. The economy wasn't great at the time when I graduated in 1990, and you're fighting for entry level jobs, which are a challenge. And of course, because I'm from a small town, 52,000 people, the opportunities simply aren't there. The bulk of the students who graduate move away and don't come back. So I moved to Southern Ontario, where there were some more opportunities certainly, but of course stiffer competition. So you kind of take the you kind of take that as it goes. And I did work in graphics for a while, and it was kind of fun, but I was faced with some realities of needing to get out of gig work. And this was gig work before gig work was a thing, and then looking for something more stable. And I had the opportunity as a reservist to to do some full time instruction on a basic training course that we were running in cooperation with one of the school boards, in a co-op program, and that set me sort of, what I didn't realize at the time was really going to be on the path to my career in L&D.
Right. Okay. So we start out with aspirations of being an architect. We move into graphic design, which then opened up a world of like training people, teaching people, which
Mhm.
moves into a world of learning and design. And
Yeah.
so, how did you? Was it all experience, or were there more formal training involved in getting to that point?
Um, that at that point, that was sheer experience, and lots of coaching and feedback, from more senior and experienced instructors, which helped. And I was also learning what I didn't realize at the time was the foundations of instructional design, um, in at a very micro level, and doing my own lesson planning,
Hmm.
which I rather enjoyed. Um, and I spent probably a good three, roughly 3 years working, maybe 4 years working for the Army full time. But and then I had been working as a recruiter for my regiment on top of other skills, and I thought maybe becoming a headhunter might be in it a good thing. I was, you know, still on a what do I want to do with my life path.
Hmm.
Um, to call that an ill-advised detour would be accurate. Certainly not what I expected, and I realized that I was not cut out for commission sales, which is essentially what headhunting is.
Right.
But because I was the most tech savvy of my colleagues, at the time when this was going on, there was this newfangled internet and World Wide Web that was coming out. And I wound up doing a lot of training and coaching and guidance for my colleagues in use of this technology and things like that. And I wound up becoming sort of the local tech guy for our branch, and did a lot of that kind of work. And after, wow, I guess almost 4 years there was an opportunity that my boss had to place me out with a company that was a Microsoft training partner, who was looking for more people to teach on a Microsoft skills program. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And so that was 1998, and that got me into a full-time corporate trainer role. But I was still operating without the benefit of any real further education. That didn't come along until 2003.
Okay, so about 5 years later, and
Yeah.
what happened?
Well, uh, in the post 9/11 downturn, there were a lot of businesses that were shedding costs, and of course, you and I have lived this, that when things get tight, L&D budgets tend to get cut. And working for a Microsoft training partner at the time who had, wow, 27 classrooms in the Toronto area, to run across 3 sites, that they felt that wasn't sustainable. So they slashed their full-time training team, they slashed their contract training team, and I fit right into their right sizing plans. So I found myself at a crossroads again, and I thought, do I want to reinvent myself again, or do I want to sort of commit to learning and development? I knew I didn't want to stay in the classroom. 4 years of teaching the same courses over and over again will suck all the joy out of that for you, or at least it did for me. And I thought, I really like the instructional design. I like the lesson planning. I like doing that kind of stuff. And so that was the path I committed myself to. Um, and then I had the opportunity, so that was 2002. And then in 2003, I had the opportunity um, to do a certificate in adult training and development. And that really sparked my interest in going back and sorting out my education, and getting ahead on more than just merit and hard work.
Right. So yeah, it's very interesting learning about there's some psychology in that. There's some human behavior things that
Yeah,
learn about like how our brains work, what is effective at making us, want to learn something or figure things out,
exactly.
what motivates
Exactly.
us, right?
And
So yeah.
and I was in a really great cohort of students. There was a good core of us who all took the same 5 or 6 courses in this program together, and it was just fantastic. I felt much more set up for success after coming out of that
Mhm.
program, and it helped. I was then working, doing some contract stuff here and there, and I was able to apply a lot of the lessons that I was learning, and that it made such a difference, because I really felt I was getting somewhere with my career path.
Right, and this program, was it part of a college program, a community college, or was it just it was separate?
It was actually run through the University of Toronto. Through
Oh, okay.
their faculty of education is called the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education,
Mhm.
and so I did their. It was basically a continuing education certificate program, postgrad cert, and liked that. And then I thought, I need to look at sorting out the rest of post secondary, like an actual credential. Um, but having taken a couple of undergrad courses part time in the years between when I left school and when I was in this particular path, I thought, I don't know that the undergrad's going to help me as much, or if I really wanted to commit to, say, a Bachelor of Education in adult ed, since that was the sector I was working in.
Mhm.
Uh, I'd have to do, like, it was going to take a long time to do it part time. And so I needed a bit of a better path, and discovered a university out on the West Coast that was geared for distance education. They were focused on working professionals, and for people like me who didn't have an undergrad, they had flexible assessment for admissions. So they would factor in relevant work experience and motivation and things like that, plus whatever education you had, and they would grant you admission based on that as well. So that's how I managed to get into a master's program in 2006.
Oh, that's exciting. So a school that says let's look at your life experience, and that counts for something.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's very much the same kind of model that institutions that offer executive MBAs
like,
um,
mhm.
would run, right? Because there were a lot of people who were in similar boats. You know, they were in leadership roles and they'd come up the hard way, and this was a way for them to get, a good educational credential without making them jump through the undergrad hoop.
Right, right. So I got my bachelor degree at the University of Washington, and I was kind of done. Like I've learned so much since then. I didn't my degree wasn't in like instructional design and
Yeah,
all, but I learned that all that stuff in other ways through experience, through books, through boot camps that I went to,
yeah,
and it's people would ask me, well, are you going to go back for a master's degree or whatever? And I thought,
mm-hmm.
I mean, by that time I had a really good job. I was doing consulting work,
Mm-hmm.
a good amount of money for what I needed in life. And my answer was, I'm making way too much money to go back, you know.
Yeah,
And I was the kind of nerdy. I love school. I love listening to somebody explain things and just, but the life experience where I got to, I just didn't need that anymore. And I
yeah,
think I would say that's a shift that's happening in today's world. Like, I mean, given like the certification that you got back then, there was in 2003, I think you said,
mm-hmm.
um that was it was an extra thing like the post learning stuff at Toronto, but there are more and more things like that people can go and learn. They can get a certification, they can do a boot camp like I did.
Yeah,
um, you can read certain books and like demonstrate what you learned from that, uh and a lot of people still struggle to do things like that because they're kind of asking, is that going to count? Like you went back to school, you like needed a credential of some kind.
mm-hmm.
Is that going to count?
Yeah. It did make a difference. I was finding that if I really wanted to advance any further, in terms of breadth or depth of career, I needed to do something. I knew there were gaps that I needed to fill in my education. Like I didn't have a lot of educational theory. I knew nothing about research, and also other perspectives on education that I may not have otherwise received. And one of the things that I really appreciated about my master's program is that it was very applied. I found undergrad to be a lot of rote learning and not a lot of thinking and research and that sort of thing. But I certainly got that in grad school, and I loved that whole experience. And again, because I was working full time and doing my master's via distance ed, you know, another opportunity to put things into practice right away, which just helped reinforce so many of the lessons that I was getting, and and also being able to share experiences with other people who were working full time about what they were able to apply and what their results were. So that was 2 years exceptionally well spent, and also it just the a lot of people talk about going back to school when they're older and how it is a different experience, and I can certainly say it is a very different experience. My motivation for school and education was significantly higher, because I could see a goal. I don't know how many people see that in high school or even in undergrad. I was a
Yeah, I caught
you know Yeah.
a statement you made about you knew you had gaps.
Oh yeah.
How did you know you had gaps?
Um, I would hear people talking about, say educational theorists, or they'd be talking about particular practices or models, and or they'd be talking about different educational contexts, and I had no idea what they were talking about.
So it was
Um,
experience. It was
yeah,
life
yeah,
experience. It was like getting out there in the real world. A lot of
yeah,
people will jump into something not even knowing that they have gaps or have this idea of what they'd like to do.
yeah.
So,
And I was also looking at it through a very narrow lens, having come up as a classroom instructor, and I was doing some what I now realize is fairly basic instructional design, but having my eyes open to the different ways in which learning can happen, and also the whole psychology of how learning takes place was just huge for me. And I mean, obviously there was something worked well, because for a guy who only hit the honor roll once in high school, I wound up as the top student in my master's program.
right, amazing. And that was so maybe you struggled a little in high school and those first years in college, but by the time you knew what you wanted to do, you were motivated. You were motivated to do really
Yeah,
well and
yeah, highly
top
motivated, and
class.
and you know and it has opened some doors, and really reigniting my path, or my passion for being able to do it. I also took the opportunity for a sabbatical about 10 years ago, and I did my HR management certificate, grad cert through community college. And that gave me the extra human capital dimensions that I didn't have strictly as an instructional designer or L&D practitioner. And that was equally eye-opening, and really enjoyed that experience as well. It's been quite beneficial. So certainly a non-conventional path for me, and lots of gaps in between, but I suppose I can't really complain. I mean, this is 37, 38 years of doing learning and development in some shape or another. So I like to think I'm doing something right.
I think so. I think so, and I think General Motors thinks so as well. So looking back, so you started out with dreams and aspirations, being an architect. You did some military time in there, got some real life experiences, ended up finding your passion and your drive to do really well in school. So looking back, would you have done anything different?
Um, oh, that's a tough question to weigh against everything else that has come along in my life since. Um, I don't know that I would do things a lot differently. But I might change the sequence of events, but I might have approached my motivation and mindset a bit differently, to to what I had gone through in the past. And I think, even in spite of, even if my academics had been better, I think I still would have been on a very, very similar path. I mean, I could have wound up getting into architecture school and hating it, or I could have gotten into actually being an architect and hating it, and then you've put all that time and investment in, and then it's like, well, now what do you do,
Right.
right? So, maybe, I think if the initial experiences had been different, um, I might have had a different view of higher ed at the time. Like, I feel maybe it took me a little bit longer to get there, but I know I'm not alone.
I think
Uh,
I asked that question, but what I find is that people usually realize that, well, if this is a journey and I
mhm.
learned everything that I learned through that journey, I mean, would I really do anything different? Because I mean, people say like knowing what you know now, would you go and do something different? But the trouble is that you wouldn't know what you know now back then.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so that journey is almost necessary, right?
yeah,
It
yeah.
it
It's
takes going through those phases and experiences to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, and um, while there may be some individual circumstances that I regret being in, I think weighed in the balance, I don't have any regrets.
That's my personal model in life. No
Yeah,
regret. Because even
yeah,
if you do, like, I learned something from that, so I don't
mhm,
regret that happened.
yeah,
All right, so we're coming up on time. I want to just kind of do a fun little lightning round. This is just
sure.
a quick like Q&A.
Yep.
What was your favorite thing to learn?
That's a tough question. I think my favorite thing to learn um, is really all around problem solving. Like I love being given a learning problem or some kind of challenge related to learning and digging into it, and applying some innovative methods to solving that problem, and that's really a big driver for me.
Right, yeah. So like not a specific topic, but a certain type of thing.
Yeah.
What about the hardest thing?
I would say data, statistics, doing that kind of analysis. I don't have as much expertise in that area as I would like. I'm also scarred scarred by my experiences in high school of not being the best maths and sciences person. So I'm hoping now, if I get in the position to pursue a doctoral degree, which I'm considering, that I'm in a better position to learn about stats and research and data analytics and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved math and sciences and all those, but it wasn't the best. I
Mm.
mean, I didn't always get the right answer, which whatever. Anyway, so last question, a little bit fun. What's something you want more people to know about you that doesn't seem obvious on the surface?
um, Well, I suppose there's a few things, but I guess my guilty pleasure is that I'm an avid scale modeler, and I have been since I was a teenager. And much like my education journey, I find that I'm appreciating the nuances of that hobby more as an adult than I did as a kid. And having access to the internet and just the overall community has made a big difference in terms of my own skills. That's how I relax. It's how I decompress. And it's another creative outlet for me that I enjoy. And there's something very satisfying about being able to not only just put something together, which is the easy part, but making things look realistic and all that kind of thing. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm
Oh,
also
wow,
an I'm also an yeah, I'm also an avid barbecue fanatic, which I truly enjoy, and I'm looking forward to getting my barbecue ready to run shortly. I'll
oh, nice, nice.
de-winterize it, and now that the weather's getting better, I can start cooking outside again.
Oh, I love that. I love that. If you ever want to get really into it, you could go to North and South Carolina. They have their barbecue specialties and
Oh
like
yes,
they're very proud.
yeah,
And so there's the North and the South, the barbecue stuff. So
and don't leave out the Kansas City folks because they're very particular, and they are in Texas as well.
yeah, yeah, a little bit all in the southern states there.
Yep, yep, I love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Really great to have you here. And I know you have to get running, but thanks again. We'll chat again soon.
You bet. Thanks, Katie.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Bye.